Good evening. Have pen and paper ready if you can, because you may have the answers.
We've got the crimes from all around the UK. Stoke-on-Trent, an armed gang burst into a Royal Mail sorting office and then set fire to their getaway car.
Get down on the floor, now!
Nottingham, vandals on the line, deliberate sabotage which almost catapulted a commuter train into the path of a high-speed express.
Liverpool, the have-a-go pensioner who tackled an armed robber.
Edinburgh, the 15-year-old girl who was baffled by strange noises in the undergrowth.
At first I thought it was just a couple of teenagers messing about and having a laugh. But then when I heard her cry for help, I realised that she was in trouble.
He's taken my bag! Oh my God! Yeah.
And Norfolk.
The outskirts of Norwich, in fact, at the height of the holiday season. If you live in Norfolk, or if you were visiting there in mid-August, take a look at this.
Yes, please. On the psychopath, I see a young woman lying down crying, and she got blood over her head. There's a great big gash in her face.
Right. Somebody's on the way.
Generally, we prepare ourselves for the worst, and then 99 times out of 100, it's actually better when you get there. But the only other time I've seen such facial injuries as that is from road traffic accidents, where obviously there's high impact.
No, try and keep still. Keep still, Julie.
We've got an ambulance coming for you, Julie. All right.
Okay.
This is Julie.
Hello, Julie. I'm a paramedic, Julie. I'm here to help, all right?
The wounds were horrific. She had heavy lacerations to her face and very, very deep incision. She was covered in a bandage, bleeding quite heavily. Hearing the screams, I thought Julie was obviously in a great deal of distress.
All right, Julie. Okay, it's all right.
Julie had been stabbed in the chest and repeatedly in the face. Every bone in her face had been broken, and it took 9 hours of surgery to try to repair the damage. Not surprisingly, police are treating the attack as attempted murder.
When I first saw my injuries, it was just a complete shock. It just didn't look like me. And just sort of running through my head was, is that what I'm going to look like? My parents brought the girls up to see me, and they came into the room, and just the look on their faces was the hardest thing, because they didn't want to come near me. And my youngest, she's 3, and she wouldn't come over and see me. She wouldn't give me a hug.
On Tuesday the 15th of August, Julie had walked home from work for her lunch break.
My husband Lee had taken the girls out for the day, and I was sort of looking forward to getting home because the house was going to be empty. With nobody else in the house, I decided to play on the PlayStation for 3/4 of an hour.
To get back to work, Julie would take the cycle path. It runs parallel to Europa Way, an industrial estate. About 25 minutes before the attack, a man was seen by a van driver outside the White Arrow delivery service, and he was looking rather angry. He had long strawberry blonde hair and was wearing a white top and baseball cap. Who was he? Julie's route took her past the Q8 petrol station. It was busy on the 15th of August with lots of tourists. Were you there that lunchtime? It's the one just off the A47 bypass as you come into Norwich. Police are anxious to trace all potential witnesses. Just past the Q8 garage is the cycle path.
As far as I know, I've never done anything to harm anybody, and to me it is totally senseless that this has been done to me. It's just brutal. Yeah, it's horrendous.
At around the time of the attack, a man was seen running and weaving across the road in Europa Way. He was in his mid-20s, dressed in beige, and had extremely short hair. Who was he? And at the other end of Europa Way, who were these two men seen running out into Brackendale Road? One was slim, athletic, with fair shoulder-length hair. The other was heavy-set, with dark collar-length hair and dark clothes.
It's going to take quite a long time for the scars to heal, and I don't know what I'm going to be left with. I've said to my husband that, you know, if somebody is caught for it, that probably the next day as my little celebration that I would walk to work. Yeah, knowing my husband, he would probably be walking about 6 feet behind me.
Julie Cooper, and what an astonishingly courageous woman. Tony, you've got new evidence since we filmed that reconstruction. Just tell us about it.
Well, there's been new witnesses come forward, and one of them saw 2 men and a woman on the footpath at exactly the time and the place where Julie was found. And that's significant because the descriptions of these 2 men are the same as those 2 running out of the Europa Way end of Brackendale Road. We need to know who those 2 are.
Just tell us those descriptions again. So one had long hair, sort of strawberry blonde,
yes.
I think.
Well, it's the witness saw auburn to red, shoulder-length wavy hair, and he's the taller of the 2. The other one she's not so sure of, but she believes him to be smaller than the woman that was on the footpath.
Now, if it was Julie, she's what, 5'4", so that would make him really short if he wasn't crouching down.
There are reasons why he may be smaller.
So
quite obviously, yes.
The odd couple in some respects. If it was a short guy with somebody with long reddish hair.
Yes, that's why it's so important for people out there who may know these people to tell us.
Now, what's the other evidence that's come out?
The other evidence is very much at the same time, and near to where Julie was found, there was a person fitting the description of the red-haired, ginger-haired man again, walking along the Martineau Lane footpath. This witness saw this person, and what drew his attention was the tattoo that was on his right arm, and it ran along the length of his right arm, and it's described as a Celtic or tribal design.
Celtic or tribal design?
Yes.
Why did he remember that?
Well, because simply his father was involved in carving furniture, and it was a design very much that he used to carve onto wooden legs, things of that nature.
Now, I know you've got some enhanced CCTV from the Q8 garage, which is very, very close, overlooking the footpath almost. You've got 3 images there. These are just witnesses, or at least they're just people you want to trace. They're not at all suspects.
Yes. These are just potential witnesses who were in the Q8 service station at the time, around time Julie walked through there to the footpath.
So if you know who any of those 3 are, please let us know, and if you can shed any light on this. A woman stabbed in the face repeatedly, breaking every bone to steal her handbag. I mean, it almost beggars belief. There's a £6,000 reward, incidentally, which has been put up by Julie's employers. If there's any way you can help, 0500 600 600, that's here to the studio. There are other detectives standing by in Norwich on 01 603 768 769.
And your call really does count. In October, we peeled on the murder of Greg Watson at the Notting Hill Carnival. We had a lot of helpful calls on the night, and subsequently a man has been charged with Greg's murder.
And another case that's been all over the news this week, the disappearance of the estate agent Susie Lamplugh back in 1986. Her mother always believed that Susie was murdered.
As a mother, I feel perhaps much more than everybody else that I very, very much want to know what happened to her, how I could have helped her, how in a way I could almost hold her hand and feel the pain.
As you'll have seen, police are now looking for Susie's body in the Norton area of Worcestershire. You may remember our July appeal, which produced some useful calls, but that search is not a result of our appeal.
Let's hope they can finally bring that case to a close. Now, you would have thought the railways were bad enough right now without deliberate sabotage. And this was sabotage designed to kill. On a Tuesday evening 3 months ago, a train set off from London bound for Nottingham. On board was a reporter from BBC East Midlands.
It had been a long day. We'd been down to London for a training course. It's a 2-hour journey. We were on our way back. It was about 8 o'clock at night.
At that particular time, we'd completed his ticket checks. We were just finishing off, counting the cash, ready for, packing up at Nottingham.
8 miles south of Nottingham is Attenborough Junction. A disused piece of track was placed across the line. It was 13 feet long and probably would have taken 3 people to lift it.
Suddenly we heard this almighty clang as the train hit an obstacle on the track. The train started shaking violently from side to side. Everybody stopped talking and just looked at each other.
When I heard the loud bang, and the dragging noise. I was in the front section of the train, the part that was derailed. It threw us about from side to side.
You could smell the brakes, the burning of the brakes, you could hear the brakes pumping. We were still shaking from side to side, and it seemed to go on for an eternity until the train came to a halt.
My biggest worry was that the train was going to tip over. Had it tipped over, that would have been a bigger catastrophe than what actually happened.
The collision forced the first carriage onto the oncoming track. A high-speed train had just gone past. Had it been a couple of minutes later, dozens, perhaps hundreds, could have been killed.
Everything became very quiet. There was just a noise of hissing air, which was obviously the brake pipes had burst.
After the train came to rest, you could see newspapers and cutlery flung all over the front of the carriage, and to have been in that carriage when that was happening must have been terrifying.
Just as the emergency services arrived, a witness saw 3 ewes walking past Barton Nature Reserve, heading away from the derailment. One at least had a light-coloured baseball cap on. Innocent walkers or potential killers? Who are they? Now, Dave, let's just remind people, this was on the 12th of September. That was about the beginning of the petrol crisis, I think. Now, it could have been so much more serious than it was, couldn't it?
Yes, in itself it was a very serious incident. We're fortunate that nobody was hurt or even killed in the derailment. However, it is an 80-mile-an-hour stretch of line. The train derailed at 80 miles an hour and ended up on the oncoming tracks. 90 seconds before, a London-bound train heading in the opposite direction had come through. Potentially, if that had been running later, there could have been a head-on collision and people would have been killed.
Without a doubt. Now, you've spoken to people already about this, haven't you?
Yes, we've spoken to lots of people and we've received some very interesting information. However, a lot of it tends to be hearsay, second, third-hand information. We're quite anxious to find out from people who've actually spoken to people who may have done this, or better still, people who could have witnessed what's taken place.
Now, people like that might be frightened about coming forward if they've actually saw it or they've heard about it and they haven't said anything yet.
We would seek to reassure them that our main interest is in the people who've actually placed the rail across the running line. If somebody has become involved to a lesser extent or they've witnessed it, we will certainly be granting them some leeway.
All right, now there's a £10,000 reward, isn't there? And the key thing is we must make sure this doesn't happen again. It was a miracle that no one was killed this time.
There have been 4 incidents before on this stretch of line, and this was obviously the most serious. We're convinced if we don't stop this incident taking place again, it will happen and people may get hurt or injured.
Right, well, we certainly don't want that to happen. Call us here on 0500 600 600 if you know anything about this case, or call the incident room. That's 0800 40 50 40.
To try and stop an armed robber takes a lot of courage, and when you're 77 years old, even more so. In Kensington and Liverpool, a pensioner must surely be in the running for the Jill Dando Award that's given each year for conspicuous bravery.
That particular day, I happened to be passing the post office, going along the road to a shop to buy something. As I got near the post office, I could hear the woman screaming. So I thought, well, you better go in. So I dashed in, and that's when it started. I pulled him off the woman, and then he started on me and gave me a clout in the ribs. And then I gave him a clout, and he ran out. But I didn't stop to think. I just done it automatic. If you're going to be afraid, you wouldn't do a thing like that.
Here's the gunman as he came into the shop. He looks thin with brown hair, and everyone says he had a local accent. Now, we're fairly sure he drove off in this red Astra with gold wheels. Where had it been prior to November? Give us a call, 0500 600 600 or 0151 777 4466.
2 letters could help solve a murder. The victim was a Lithuanian woman called Nicole Siskovichian. She was a hotel worker living in Wembley, North London. Her body was found sitting upright behind garages not far from her home. She'd been tied up and strangled. Which brings me to the letters which were sent to the investigating team. Now, showing them would be a breach of confidence, but what I can tell you is that both contained eyewitness accounts of seeing a body being taken by 2 black men from Nicole's house in Lancelot Road and placed in a car. Now, one letter said, "I am too old. I'm afraid to go outside my door." The other said, "Sorry, I do not want my family in this sort of thing." Please, if you wrote those letters, we do need your help. Call 0500 600 600 or 020 8358 1864.
In November last year, we appealed about the murder of Jean Barnes in Worthing in Sussex. Someone had been stealing from her, and police discovered that bank application forms, letters and cheques in her name were forgeries. They needed to identify the distinctive handwriting. They also thought the same tactic might have been used on other elderly people.
We'd be very interested to hear from anybody that has had a burglary followed by a bogus telephone call asking for details and then the opening of an account which they weren't aware of.
Audrey Ridpath had been watching a preview of the Crime Watch appeal on BBC South Today.
I was watching the early evening news and this letter came up and I was astonished to see something that I thought I'd seen before, or something very similar.
David Munley lived a few hundred yards from Jean Barnes, and he began stealing antique furniture and china from her home in 1998.
Of course, when it was realised that David Munley had been charged, we started having calls from antique dealers. They told us that he'd been selling antiques to them, I think 5 different antique shops, for up to a year before the murder.
A document examiner confirmed Munley's handwriting was a very strong match with the forgeries. David Munley not only wanted Jean Barnes's possessions, but all her money and ultimately her home. When she changed her locks so he could no longer get access, he killed her.
He was a very evil man. He murdered and continued to steal from an 87-year-old frail, vulnerable lady. Covered up the body with a blanket, covered up the murder with letters to the milkman, paying off cheques. He paid off the electricity board, red reminder so that Seaboard wouldn't come round. He paid off the milkman so that milk wouldn't be delivered.
Last week, David Munley was found guilty of murder and was sentenced to life imprisonment. Jean Barnes' nephew was in court.
Brilliant woman who was knocked to the ground, skull smashed in at the age of 87, and afterwards for up to perhaps 2 weeks to steal the goods around her dead body. I have no words for the swine of a man who has murdered my aunt at the age of 87.
Stoke-on-Trent 2 months ago in a robbery by 2 men. But it must have involved a lot of other people. Several on the fringes will surely now be tempted by a huge reward. If the robbery in Stoke was planned, what led up to it a month before and 40 miles away in Manchester was opportunist. In Haywood, a businessman had driven in his Range Rover to take photos of a property he was interested in.
Oi! Oi!
A week later, again in Haywood.
As I pulled onto the station, there was a young lady that was parked on the pump at the opposite side. She was in a state.
You all right?
Oh, can you help me? I just can't seem to get into the pump. Can you tell me when I'm going to hit?
OK, just let me move my car.
Thanks.
As I got out of my car, I saw a male.
It's chaotic here today, isn't it, mate?
Well tanned, about 5'8", 25, 30 years of age. And that's the last that I saw of him at that petrol station.
Oi! He's just nicked my car!
The Lexus thief was seen a few days later opposite the garage, getting on a bus for Bury. That Lexus soon turned up in Stoke-on-Trent, and on successive Wednesdays through September and October it was seen in Stewart Road with false number plates. On one occasion, when the men inside realised they'd been noticed, they walked off towards Green Street Nature Reserve. Call us if you saw them. The day before the robbery, the Lexus was seen 3 times by a taxi driver in the city centre. The driver was a big man in his late 20s, early 30s, tanned or Mediterranean-looking and with a goatee beard, which could, of course, be false. Once, he had a passenger with him. Just opposite Stoke-on-Trent station is the Royal Mail sorting office. And if you were in Station Road early on Wednesday morning, the 18th of October, you may have seen something unusual. Money bags were being loaded into a van, and at 8:05, the stolen Range Rover careered towards the depot. Meanwhile, round the back, a man was seen above the depot near Thornton Road.
There's a car gone down that ramp, block his exit! I'm calling the police!
Get down, on the floor, now! Is this the money van?
What? What's going on?
Back inside, you! Inside! Down, you! Is that everything?
That's everything.
Their escape route had now been completely blocked by post office staff, but the robbers had intended to abandon the Range Rover anyway and make a run for it.
You all right?
Yeah.
You're all right. Smell burning.
The Range Rover had probably been booby-trapped with some sort of incendiary device.
Call the fire brigade.
A stolen Maestro van was waiting in Thornton Road. It too had been stolen from Greater Manchester. Ten minutes away, in Austin Street,
I heard a vehicle passing in the street and I thought, oh, my partner had come back home. So I just walked by my window and noticed the silvery grey van. And I just carried on concentrating on the driver because he was a couple of minutes messing inside the vehicle. And I noticed he got these big, chunky, thick black gloves on and his hood up on his coat. And I thought it seemed a bit odd because it wasn't raining, it was quite a clear morning. So I opened that and popped my head in and noticed this cigarette and bunch of matches.
they were perched above a bottle filled with petrol. If the cigarette hadn't gone out, the device could have caused her appalling injuries.
Police officer said we'd been really lucky because it should have gone off.
The Lexus had been parked just around the corner near the nature reserve, and presumably that's how the pair escaped. That evening, the Lexus was found, burnt out.
Phil, there only appear to have been 2 people who actually carried out the robbery, but quite possibly several other people involved in the run-up to that. Some of them must be tempted by this reward. There's a big reward in this.
Yes, there is. The reward is up to £30,000 now, and we've done this really because of the seriousness of the offence, and it's a wonder someone wasn't killed in the attack and the events that followed. There are undoubtedly quite a few people involved in the planning and the preparation of the offence. We today are primarily interested in the people who actually committed the robbery and who carried out these callous acts.
So say, for example, if someone nicked the car or one of those 3 cars that was stolen and is frightened about coming forward, what would you say to them?
At this moment in time, that's not one of my major concerns. My major concern is, as I say, the robbers themselves. If anyone who's involved in these preparatory acts wishes to speak to me, they can do so. If they wish to contact us by way of Crime Stoppers, they can do so. And by doing that, it will mean that they can speak and give information without the police knowing their identities.
Now, as we saw in the film, there were 3 cars that were stolen in the run-up to this. Now, they had false number plates. We can see them here.
Yes.
What do you want to know about those?
We really need to know who had those number plates made up and where they were made up. Again, I would urge whoever made them up to contact us to give us the information who made them.
Now, If I made false number plates, I know it was illegal. I wouldn't particularly want to come forward to the police. Why should they?
Well, whoever's had these made up has got vital information as to who the robbers are, and for that reason we need that information.
And again, you're not after them. It's the
No.
information they can give you about the people who actually carried out the robbery.
That's correct, yes.
Now, there was another car. There's a lot of cars involved in this. A blue Orion. And you want to know more about that?
Yes, at the time of the theft of the Range Rover, there was a blue Orion seen with 3 youths on board. We're not certain if it's connected at this stage, but we would like those people to come forward and to contact us and give us information.
And then, of course, if they're not, you can eliminate them
That's
from your
correct,
inquiries. Now, these incendiary devices, amazing the woman who discovered that one wasn't killed.
Yes, the incendiary devices are quite crude, made up of petrol, matches and cigarettes. And I've no doubt that if the device had have exploded, we would have been looking at a fatality.
Now, there's 2 men you want to trace, aren't there?
Yes, there are 2 men we wish to trace. 2 men were seen entering the railway station approximately an hour after the offence. We have them on video. They may not be connected with the robbery.
They may be entirely innocent, of course,
and,
yeah.
Yes, and for that reason we'd like them to ring in and give us their identities.
OK, well, let's see what we can do tonight. The number to call is 0500 600 600 or 01785 234 995. And if you want to give information anonymously, as you heard there, on this or any other crime, you can call Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111.
Coming up, the 15-year-old girl who was baffled by strange noises in the undergrowth.
At first I thought it was just a couple of teenagers messing about and having a laugh. But then when I heard her cry for help, I realised that she was in trouble.
He's taken my bag! Oh my God!
The mobile phones, they'll tell you, fell off the back of a lorry, but the truth is a good deal worse.
Get in the back!
Right, you know what's happening to you.
All
Keep
right,
quiet, you
all
won't
right.
get hurt.
All right, mate. All right,
Get in the back, go on.
And 2 girls who disappeared a year apart. Their families appeal for news on what now, ominously, looks like it could be an abduction and double murder.
4 faces for you to track down now. See if you know any of them. All are wanted for trying to get drugs worth millions onto our streets. This is Bruce Clark, this is Diane Gibson, here's Stephen Jackson, and this is Benjamin Heron. The drugs trade is so destructive we need all the help you can give. Call 0500 600 600.
And still on the subject of drug crime, if you don't know the faces that Jeremy mentioned, you may recognise where this came from. It's one of at least 50 containers used to smuggle half a tonne of cannabis into this country from the Netherlands. Now, they could have been made for quite an innocent purpose, but take a look at it. This one, it isn't mass-produced, and the lid locks with an Allen key. Now, did you make up an order of boxes like this? If you did, please call us here, or you can call 0800 085 3989.
To Edinburgh now, in fact south of the city, and one of the worst cases of sex crime police there have ever encountered. One victim was 18, the other a child of 11. To protect their privacy in this reconstruction, we've altered some of what happened.
Saturday afternoon, the eve of Guy Fawkes Night, and 2 girls from different parts of Edinburgh were to find their lives linked through a horrific series of events. This is Cameron Toll Shopping Centre on the south side of Edinburgh at about 4:30 that Saturday afternoon.
It was just an ordinary afternoon shop. I was going to buy a top for going out that night. I was just going out with friends.
Don't know how many times I nearly fell over.
Yeah, well, I nearly saved you most of them.
So you're going to go to the party afterwards?
I don't think so. I would like to, though, but my mum says I've got to pick my wee sister.
The rear entrance to Cameron Toll is through Braidburn Walkway. Before the attack, it was very poorly lit.
He just came out from nowhere. He just appeared. He grabbed me from behind, and that's when he pulled me into the bushes. He didn't sound angry at all, or he wasn't raising his voice or shouting or anything.
Get off me!
Be quiet! Stop screaming! I'll stab you!
He took his hand off my mouth. I started screaming, and he says, "Please don't scream. No one's going to help you."
I will stab you!
I'm sure 2 women walked past. I heard voices walking up that way. No one came to see what was going on.
In fact, many people walked by, but the attacker pretended it was a domestic dispute, and for several minutes, nobody intervened.
Have you been drinking again? Have you been drinking again?
I was just thinking of getting away, that's all. Just kept fighting him off.
But one passerby, a 15-year-old, did realise something was wrong.
I could hear muffling sounds in the bushes. And at first I thought it was just a couple of teenagers messing about and having a laugh. But then when I heard her cry for help, I realised that she was in trouble. I got hold of my scarf, which came off my neck, and I just managed to run.
Oh my God! This guy's just attacked me! He's taken my bag! Oh my God!
She was crying. She was breathing quite heavily. She couldn't catch her breath. She was in a state.
In his panic to escape, the attacker left behind a glove. It's a large size, plum burgundy in colour.
He's trying to attack me.
If you recall seeing this incident 6 weeks ago, please get in touch. Or maybe, like one passerby, you saw a man emerge from the trees and bushes and out onto Gilmerton Road. In fact, were you anywhere around the rear entrance to Cameron Toll at any time that Saturday? At 4:30, an hour before the attack, this man saw a suspicious figure lurking in the undergrowth.
Hi, Mum. Mum, I'll be okay, I'll be fine. I'm actually quite hungry though, so I might stop off with some chips on the way.
Half a mile from the scene of the attack and half an hour later, this is Craig Miller Park, just after 6 p.m. Did you notice anyone hanging about in Mentone Gardens, or Mentone Terrace, or out onto Mayfield Road?
Yes, please.
Can I get a bag of chips, please?
Thanks.
Thanks, bye.
At 6:15 on a Saturday night, Mayfield Road would have been busy. But once she'd crossed into Relugas Road, it was deserted. And when she turned into Finhorn Place, she realised she was being followed.
If you keep quiet and do what I say, you'll be all right. If you don't keep quiet, I'll stab you. Over the wall. And drop your chips.
When I heard that he had attacked someone else, I sent a card just to let them know that I was thinking of her and that I know what she was going through and everything.
The child was subjected to a serious sexual assault for 30 minutes at the back of Newington Library.
Then, around 7 p.m, a man was seen wandering off down Blackett Place towards Dalkeith Road. Late 20s or early 30s, dark hair with stubble.
If you know anything, please just contact the police or whoever you can. He's done this to me and the other girl. Just want to catch him.
Well, presumably everybody will want to catch him, even his mother. Gavin, I mean, how can people help?
Well, our appeal tonight is aimed mainly at people living in the south side of Edinburgh, in particular the 1 mile radius around the Newington Library. We believe that the person has a good local knowledge of that area.
He couldn't have known what was the other side of that wall unless he lived there
either
or knew it
lives there
very well.
or frequents there, passing through or whatever. So really that's what we're looking for.
Now, you know quite a bit about it. You can narrow it to that area. You're looking for a man in his, 20s and 30s, perhaps mid-20s to mid-30s.
Yes.
We know he's got stubble, we know he's got dark hair. Yeah. Presumably he's got rather curious sexual habits,
Clearly
or
he does.
if any known sexual habits at all.
Clearly. We also know he's wearing a pair of gloves. This is one of the gloves that was actually
This has still
found.
got the exhibit label on it.
That's
This
right.
is the original glove that was found.
That's right.
And I said large, I mean actually it's not all that large, but he's missing the other one of those.
That's right. And it's really if anybody knows of somebody who wears a pair of gloves like this and all of a sudden is no longer doing so.
And relatives, friends, flatmates or anything, who would they have noticed a big behaviour change around Guy Fawkes night?
That's what we're looking for really, is anybody who's noticed a change in behaviour either before on the build up towards the 4th of November or since. If they give us a call, we have a DNA profile of the person and it's a simple matter to take a mouth swab from anybody that's suggested and then we can compare that with the profile that we have.
It's a terrible crime. It's
horrifying.
On a child. So everybody will want to put up names if they can. You're saying you can easily eliminate the wrong person just with a mouth swab, just like that?
Just like that. Within 24 hours we'd have an answer. It takes a few seconds to take the swab and within 24 hours we have the answer.
Just tell us about the scarf. Now this isn't the actual scarf. We saw in the reconstruction that when the 18-year-old struggled, the scarf came off. You've never recovered her scarf.
Right.
So this is an identical one?
That's an identical scarf, yes.
So either he's kept it as some sort of memento winter.
Or he's thrown it away.
So if anybody's found a scarf like this anywhere in the south of Edinburgh?
Yes. Or if somebody knows of somebody who's actually started to wear a scarf like this or has a scarf like this now that they didn't have before, where did that scarf come from?
Well, if you are his mum or fear you are, or know him in any way, give us a call, please. 0500 600 600 or Edinburgh 311 3535.
Now, we had some very good calls on that case in Norwich, the Norwich stabbing, if you remember Julie Cooper, who was so brave, I think, to appear on Crime Watch. A terrible stabbing just to take her bag. We've had names given of 2 of the people we showed on CCTV inside the Q8 garage. We still need a third. Now, the people we were referring to as the odd couple, we've had one name given for the ginger-haired man with that unusual tattoo, and a police officer has rung in with a name too. He recognises someone who he thinks has committed an offence in his area. We still need more on that train derailment, though. Keep calling us, or you can email us at cwuk@bbc.co.uk.
A violent confrontation on the slip road of a motorway. 2 girls had accidentally cut up another driver near Doncaster, and suddenly he stopped in front of them and then assaulted them.
Open the door! You nearly killed me, you stupid cow!
We had 120 calls and 3 named Joseph Wardby from Derbyshire. One viewer even recognised small details from the reconstruction that we hadn't drawn attention to. Mr. Wardby has been convicted of common assault and criminal damage and has been sentenced to 3 months in prison.
18 months ago, we appealed about a series of armed robberies in the West Country and West Midlands. Ian Phelps was nearly caught on the night of the programme. A police officer rang in to say Phelps had just done a robbery in his area, but missed catching him by seconds. A crucial witness called in too. Eventually, Phelps was traced to Edinburgh and has now been sentenced to 14 years. How can 2 young women be walking along the street in the late afternoon and then simply disappear? There will have been people around, someone must have seen them, yet they just seem to have vanished into thin air. These are the last pictures of Elizabeth Chow, seen on CCTV in Ealing in West London in April last year. Liz, as she was known, was Vietnamese, 19 years old and on her way home from Thames Valley University, where she was studying. Lola Shenkoya was last seen walking towards the tube station, also in Ealing, in January this year. She was 27. Police are now treating both these disappearances as murder. Both Lola's and Elizabeth's family are now here with Detective Inspector Alan Rice-Smith. Alan, what do you think happened to these 2 young women?
Well, Lola and Elizabeth have disappeared in very close proximity to each other. This is either a complete coincidence or they may have fallen victim to the same attacker or attackers. I believe that they've both been abducted and murdered, and I believe that the attacker must have used a vehicle, a car or a van of some nature, that they've either abducted forcibly the girls, possibly by using some concealed weapon, or that they've either duped the girls to go with them in some way by using some deception or perhaps because they knew them.
Well, let's look at Liz Chow first. What do we know about her last movements?
Elizabeth Chow disappeared on the 16th of April 1999. She'd left the Thames Valley University and in fact was walking home along the Uxbridge Road in Ealing. The last sighting actually was on the CCTV that you've mentioned at 18 minutes past 6 p.m. on that evening, and she had less than half a mile to walk from there to reach her home, but she never reached there.
Just half a mile. What was she wearing? Tell us about that.
She was wearing a black body warmer, a maroon V-necked shirt, blue jeans, and she was wearing some jewellery.
We've got a copy of her pendant here. This is what was a jade?
It's a jade Buddha that she would have been wearing around her neck on a gold chain.
So someone may have seen this.
Yes.
But you're Elizabeth's sister. I know it's an ordeal for you coming on this programme. You want information tonight, don't you?
Yes, we're here tonight to appeal to the public for their help. We desperately need to know what happened to Elizabeth. And I strongly believe that there's somebody out there that knows something. Now, I'm pleading for them to come forward. And, you know, Elizabeth was such a beautiful young lady. I just don't know why somebody would want to hurt her.
Mrs. Chow, it would have been Elizabeth's birthday, 21st birthday, just 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, she turned 21 a couple of weeks ago, and she should been celebrate her 21st birthday with her family and friends. Instead, she's still missing. We miss her every day. We love her very dearly.
I'm sure you do. Now, Alan, what about Lola? Because she disappeared too. What about her last name movements?
Yes, Lola went missing on the 3rd of January of this year, which was the Bank Holiday Monday following the Millennium celebrations. She was travelling on an E2 bus that she'd caught at Northfields tube station, and she was just getting off opposite Ealing Broadway tube station. The bus driver distinctly remembers Lola on the bus and getting off there because she in fact wished him a Happy New Year, and she was in fact the only person that had done so that day. He also recalls a hat that she was wearing, a very distinctive hat that we have a copy of here.
Yes, someone would recognise this, you'd think.
You'd think so. She'd bought it in Paris, and in fact we had to go as far as Paris to obtain this replica.
So, very distinctive indeed, as you say. Akin, you're Lola's uncle. The impact on your family must be terrible by all this.
Yeah, devastating entirely. And Lola is a very nice girl, religious, and it won't hurt no one. She came to London last year, having got a degree from Royal Holloway College in Eton. And she's just managing her life quietly before this thing happened. And we're all devastated about it. And the longer it goes, the more agonizing it is. See, and we're not very happy at all.
No, I'm sure. Well, let's see what information we can get in tonight. Someone, somewhere, must know or must suspect what happened to these two young women, or who was involved in their abduction and their murder. There's a reward, £15,000 for any information leading to a conviction. The number to call is 0500 600 600, or you can call the incident room on 020 8358 1777.
I've just checked and we've had 4 calls in support of our Have a Go hero. Now, this 77-year-old pensioner was incredibly brave when he tackled this robber in the Liverpool post office. We believe the robber had been hanging around before the attack, and if you recognise him, then ring us up. Now, have another look at these 4 faces. They're all wanted for drugs crimes. The sooner you tell us where they are, the sooner we can deal with them.
We also appealed earlier for the authors of 2 letters from potential eyewitnesses that have been sent to the investigating officers in the murder of Nicole Siskovičian. Unfortunately, neither of them have felt able so far to call up. If you are watching, please, your call will be dealt with the utmost sensitivity and confidentiality. And indeed, if you have any information about the murder of this young lady, please keep calling in. Our lines are open all evening.
Coming up, 2 men, both wanted on kidnap charges. Here they are. We'll tell you more about that in a moment. And where's the rapist, Trevor Masters? He ought to be in jail.
Behind me is surveillance footage from a camera at junction 14 of the M25. It's in Stanwell near Heathrow Airport. If you look at it for long enough, the chances are you might see a lorry hijack. Junction 14 has recently been the focus of some very nasty offences.
Come on, put your foot down, we're way behind time.
All right.
Shift it.
So there's another one before Christmas then?
Oh, be quiet. Don't really think it's the time to be talking about it, do you? Get out! Right, now get out! And keep walking. There's a pub about half a mile up the road.
It was a relief. Yeah, it was a definite relief to know that I was going to get out of it alive.
Chris's ordeal had begun 2 hours earlier when he'd left a depot owned by Hawk Logistics, loaded with Nokia mobile phones. He was making for Dover and ultimately heading for Cologne. By 8:30 on Thursday the 12th of October, he'd passed junction 10, heading for junction 9.
go now from the Moody Blues. We've got the Trogs there. We had the Hollies in the middle. You're listening to Sweeney's 60s classics for me.
Get in the back!
This is rock and roll heaven.
Right, you know what's happening to you. Keep quiet, you won't get hurt.
All right, mate. All right,
Get in the back, go on.
All right.
Get in the front and drive. I ain't driving it. Drive it! I ain't driving it. No!
When he smacked me with a gun, then I knew that they didn't care. And I thought, well, if I did try and be the hero, I would either get shot or something else would happen to me. They just did not care what they were doing.
Once Chris had got the lorry going, they forced him down into the footwell with a pillowcase over his head. He did, though, see a sawn-off shotgun, and one of the men had a wisp of ginger beard or moustache. He also noticed at least one of them shared his love of 60s music.
So good. So good. I got you.
The lorry turned off the M25 at junction 9, then came back up the motorway, now heading clockwise towards junction 14. There, they seemed to take the turning left towards Poyle. Chris felt the lorry stop and listened while it was unloaded. He heard footsteps on gravel, planes overhead, some roller shutters, and thought a metal gate was opened and closed. Then he was taken out of the lorry, still with a pillowcase over his head, and forced into the boot of a car.
Going through my mind was just like, what's going to happen to me next? Am I going to get out of this, or are they just going to leave me locked up in the boot of the car and just go off? Or are they going to take me somewhere else?
Get out!
Get out!
Sometime that night, the hijacked lorry and a stolen silver Audi were abandoned at Leylands Lane in Stanwell. 4 days later, an almost identical attack, one of a series of similar armed hijacks on the M25 around Stanwell and in Essex around Waltham Abbey. This time, the driver was German and doesn't speak English, so this is a translation of what he told us.
2 men, both masked, dashed out of the car.
Get out! Get out!
At the time it happened, it was so quick, I didn't have time to be frightened, really. Afterwards, I was very shocked.
After the cargo of phones was unloaded, the van, with German plates, was dumped in Lightwater.
This is the type of phone that the robbers are going for. They're the Nokia 8210s, the tiny little, rather dinky ones. Now, if you're handling stolen phones like that, you could face years in prison for this offence. And as for the hijackers themselves, they could face life for armed robbery and abduction. But if you'd like to make money legitimately, well, tell us who the robbers are, because the reward is, wait for it, £160,000. As for people masquerading as police, never stop on the motorway if you're carrying a valuable cargo, unless it's on the instructions of police officers in a properly marked police patrol car. OK, £160,000 reward on this. 0500 600 600. Or if you prefer, 01 784 446733.
These are the 2 men wanted for separate cases of kidnap. Now, thankfully, it's a rare crime in this country, but when it happens, it's terrifying for the victims and families and presents a major challenge for us. In Colin Cannon's case, we hope he can tell us about how a family came to be locked in a purpose-built prison in a derelict house. The husband was told that they'd be harmed if he didn't hand over cash from his work. And we think Donald Donovan's responsible for abducting someone close to his ex-girlfriend and holding him to ransom. Now, he may be in Croydon in Surrey. Call the studio 0500 600 600 or the instant room on 01923 472 069.
Now, why did a man who didn't own a dog die with a dog lead wrapped around his hand? Did he grab it from whoever killed him? Keith Nicholson lived alone in Guildford, Surrey. We don't know much about him, but what we do know is that on September the 17th, when there was a fireworks display at Stoke Park, he went for an evening walk and was viciously attacked outside his home by 2 men. Keith died from a head injury later that night in hospital. Now, another odd clue, did the attackers leave these 2 gold rings behind? Both were women's antique rings. Now, can you put these two clues together and tell us who murdered Keith Nicholson? 0500 600 600 or 01483 484 025.
A convicted paedophile and rapist. He should be in prison. He's been sentenced to 12 years, but he jumped bail and disappeared. He's Trevor Masters, and this is what he did to one woman.
Trevor Masters started abusing me when I was 11, and 3 or 4 times a week until I was 14. He carried on sexually abusing me. He comes across as very charming, especially with women, but when you get to know him, his other side comes out. He's evil. He used to punch and kick my brother, and he had numerous knives and weapons around the walls of the house. He threatened me with a horsewhip once. It's definitely affected my life more since the trial. It's constantly on my mind knowing that he's out there. I think anybody who's trying to help him is very misguided. They obviously don't realise how dangerous he can be and that he will offend again. I hope that if anybody's got any information, they will telephone the police, because the sooner he's behind bars, the safer I'll feel.
We must find this man. Trevor Masters is tall with a West Midlands accent. He jumped bail in August, and we think he went to Strasbourg, but he could be anywhere tonight. He had a Land Rover, which he might have got rid of, and a brown and white spaniel called Jess. He's described as a charming Casanova. As you heard, he's a dangerous paedophile and rapist. If you see him, call the police immediately. 01495 232360.
I don't want to raise false hopes, but we've really got some incredibly good-looking calls, particularly on the attack on Julie Cooper in Norwich. Now, we really want more information on the attacks in Edinburgh on the 2 girls. One was 11 years old.
If you keep quiet and do what I say, you'll be all right. If you don't keep quiet, I'll stab you. Over the wall. And drop your chips.
We have had 6 names on that already, more coming in, but please keep the calls coming. And if you want to speak confidentially, if you've been a victim yourself, to Victim Support Line, the number is 0845 30 30 900. Next month, the biggest murder hunt ever in Wales. 2 best friends raped and strangled 27 years ago.
Consul 1 from Sergeant Jones. We discovered the body of a young girl in Llandarcy Woods.
567 to control. Could you arrange some tape? We need to cordon off the area.
We can imagine what they went through. They must have been terrified.
Sarge! There's another one, yeah!
We live with that every day of our lives. To think what them 2 girls went through. And that is the nightmare. Constant nightmare, night after night.
Join us in January, see if you can help find the killer of Pauline Floyd and Geraldine Hughes.
There are more numbers on CFAX on page 621. Join us for the Crime Watch update. That's after the news, unless you're in Scotland, and then it's on a little bit later.
Join us then, but if not, don't have nightmares, do sleep well, have a happy and crime-free Christmas and New Year from both of us. Good night.
Good night.
Welcome to another crime scene.